Hey guys, Tom Barclay here outside Hoffenheim Stadium after Tottenham won 3-2 over Hoffenheim, a much needed victory in the Europa League. Hairy moments at times, and that's the way it's going for Tottenham at the moment, but crucially they won. But I want to start off with actually some news that Ange Postecoglou has just revealed that wasn't part of the game. It involves Dominic Solanke. Unfortunately, his knee injury, which he picked up in training when having a shot on Saturday ahead of the Everton game, is worse than they first feared. Ange had originally said a few weeks, but that's actually been upgraded to 6 weeks now, which when I was working it out should be 8 games if it's from the day of the injury, which should be on last Saturday, as I say, take him up to March the 1st. 8 games that would be provided they don't somehow fall into the Europa League playoffs, and obviously be more. You think after tonight's win they probably won't be, but 8 games that will include a lot of games in the Premier League, obviously that crucial second leg against Liverpool, which I think most fans were sort of half expecting he might miss anyway. The FA Cup quarter-final, FA Cup fourth round against Aston Villa, Elfsborg obviously next week, and then hopefully be back in time for Bournemouth on March the 8th. If he can be a bit earlier, then there's Man City away on February the 26th. So there's always that possibility as well. But yeah, huge blow for him. If they do make the final of the Carabao Cup, then that is March 16th. So you'd think he'd have a good couple of weeks to really get up to fitness for that. But I suppose, to be fully fit is still a question mark over that. So big blow, given what a great signing he's been. Yes, his goal return might not blow people away if they just look at that. 11 goals in 29 games, I think it is. But for all Spurs fans who've watched him, he's such a good fit for this system. He works absolutely tirelessly every game. It felt like he was getting better and better, albeit less effective against Arsenal. But recently, particularly against Liverpool in the Carabao Cup and some of the other games, he was really coming into his own. Obviously, he'd earned that England recall earlier this season. And was just things were going well. But such is the way with Tottenham this season. A player who was fully fit pretty much all year last year for Bournemouth suddenly swings a shot in training, does his knee, and is now 6 weeks. So there you go. So unfortunately some negative news to start off with, but that is the most probably crucial thing to come out of this evening beyond the result. Which, let's move on to that now. And I know there were times when it looked pretty hairy, as I say, pretty worrying that they might get caught, but they didn't, and they won, and they had 14 players missing, and that shouldn't be overlooked. Look at the bench tonight. The bench tonight, this is not for a dead rubber. This is for a game that really mattered for Tottenham. They had 2 goalkeepers, and they had 6 teenagers. Those included Mikey Moore, who's probably considered part of the first team. He's one of, we think, the 13 first team players that Ange alluded to. But bear in mind, he is only 17 and still getting changed at the academy side of Hotspur Way. So that underlines how young he is. And Will Lancashire, who, he scored and played against Galatasaray, as well as getting sent off. But let's be honest, generally he's a very inexperienced player at this level. And it also saw Callum Asusi, who's been a player who's been on the bench quite a lot during this injury-hit season, finally make his debut, so congratulations to him. But the fact that he was coming on and that many youngsters on the bench really did underline how many issues Spurs had. As I say, 14 players are absent, 10 of those are through injury, like Solanke and a bunch of others obviously, but 4 of them were due to ineligibility. Jed Spence and Sergio Reguilon, and new signings Anthony Kinski and Yang Min-hook, all ineligible for this game. And I suppose there might be question marks towards the goalkeeper, because Brandon Austin came in for this match. It was a question mark whether it would be Fraser Forster or Brandon Austin. Forster obviously been getting the nod for most of the time, even before Vicario was injured, because Ange was sort of changing it up. He went with Austin, who finally made his debut for the club against Newcastle, played well, and Kinski was brought in pretty much the day after. I thought Austin was really good today. So I don't want to hammer Ange at all, but I suppose fans might be wondering, as they did at the time, why Forster was put into the squad in the first place and Spence was left out. If Austin had this in his locker, maybe Ange did not think that was possible earlier this season, then I suppose people might question whether they could have gone with Austin as the sort of number 2 for this competition and given Spence a place instead of Forster. But by the by now. But what's important is the fact that he had a really good performance, I thought, and was a key factor in this victory, making a lot of crucial saves. So just to go through the game, I mean, Hoffenheim are a poor team. They're going through a really bad season, a shit season, according to their key player, Andre Kramaric, where they've only won 6 games all year. They're in a relegation fight for a team that quite regularly competes for Europe and have spent a lot of money. That was very noticeable. And in fact, their first 25 minutes, Tottenham looked as comfortable as they have for a long time. And I was trying to work out whether I thought it was because Spurs were playing well or because Hoffenheim was so bad. I think it was probably a bit of a combination of the two. But either way, a Tottenham team who, should we not forget, were woken up at 2 a.m. in the morning by fireworks from some pesky home fans being let off outside their hotel. They made an explosive start, scoring inside 2 minutes. James Maddison, a lovely goal. Ball up over the top from Pedro Porro, right on the money, and then Maddison with a sort of paintbrush-esque first touch, bring the ball down and fires it past the keeper. Brilliant start. That was 1-0, and then it wasn't long, it was 22 minutes before it was 2-0. Maddison involved again, playing the ball through to Son, who managed to control it just about with his chest. Sort of question marks over whether it was handball or not, but it was his chest. Goes through, has a shot, which just takes a massive deflection, loops up and goes into the box. So it goes into the goal, which was a big boost for Spurs at that point. But then Hoffenheim started to come into it, and we know that Tottenham, it's been rocky at periods, and they've had moments like Brighton, way back when it wasn't going so badly, but obviously that result turned out to be a bit of a disaster where they've shown a fragility even before the injuries and even more so with the injuries. So with Spurs right now that they're going to give teams a chance, and obviously that's something they need to work on, and that was the case here. There was, I think, 4 good chances for Hoffenheim before half-time, of which Austin did really well. 2 fell to Max Mørsted, who was suddenly in range with it from sort of 8-10 yards out. 2 shots, 2 poor efforts, but good saves from Austin. And then Tom Bischoff, who I'd mentioned ahead of the game, this 19-year-old who's off to Bayern Munich, had a really good chance with about sort of 8 yards out or so. And Austin made a brilliant save, one-handed save, to keep the ball out of the goal. So that was really impressive from him. And then I think there was one more after that before half-time. I've forgotten at this point exactly who it was. But anyway, the point being that Hoffenheim were sort of really threatening at that point. Bergvall probably should have made it 3-0 though, having said that. There was a good free kick, I think, in from Maddison. Bergvall goes for a header. Bear in mind he scored against Liverpool, and Ange just talked about how he thinks he can be more of a goal threat. His header wasn't, well, it was on target, but it probably wasn't the best, and it was a very good save from Oliver Baumann in the Hoffenheim goal. Then it gets to half-time, but Hoffenheim just carried on, sort of putting the pressure on after this in the second half. Kramaric, who I mentioned earlier, used to play for Leicester. Actually played for them in their Premier League title-winning season briefly, but has been at Hoffenheim ever since. He had a header which hit the bar, and then Hoffenheim thought they had a penalty. This ball comes in, Mørsted goes up for a header with Austin, and at first it looked like Austin, who was trying to punch the ball away, might have just cleaned out the striker, and that's what the referee thought at first. But he was then sent to, as Kramaric was waiting to take the penalty, the referee was then sent to the monitor, have another look, and basically Austin does get a hand in front of first before sort of connecting with the striker, and it gets overturned, rightly so. And I think even Jed Spence, who obviously not here due to being ineligible, might have tweeted at that point, what, question mark, with a few laughing emojis over how that penalty was ever given in the first place. But the right decision was made in the end, and that's what really matters. And you wondered if that might be their sort of big moment for Hoffenheim, but it wasn't. Big moment they might have passed them by, but it wasn't. They actually scored quite quickly after that. Not a particularly well defended goal from Tottenham's perspective. Ball comes in, and there's Anton Stack to sort of turn it home past Austin from close range. And suddenly it was 2-1. You're thinking, okay, been here before with Spurs, how's this going to go? But then up steps Son. A really terrible pass from one of the Hoffenheim defenders, goes straight to Bentancur, who had a really good game, I thought. Plays it to Mikey Moore, who's come on off the bench. He gives it to Son, and then it was vintage Son. Beautiful drop of the shoulder, step over to get around the defender and blast it into the far corner with left-footed strike. Really sort of clean strike, kind of strike of a football that we've come to associate with Sonny. And I hadn't noticed at the time, but it was pointed out to me later that his celebration, I think he was given a bit of the shush kind of celebration. I wonder if that was direct towards the Spurs fans, because obviously at Everton he was giving dogs abuse, to be honest, at full time by his own fans. Maybe because they felt he could have come over to them. That's what social media footage looked like. They could come over nearer to them to sort of applaud their support. But there did seem to be quite a lot of nasty words being what it looked like sent his way, and Son himself looked pretty distraught after that game. So whether that was a reaction to that or not, I'm not sure. But overall, it was a big performance from Son, at least in terms of scoring goals, which he's really, or in terms of being clinical, I suppose, which he hasn't really been enough for a player of his quality this season, and particularly of late. So that was, in the end, enough, albeit Hoffenheim did still manage to cut it back to 3-2 with their substitute David Mokra heading in at the far post with 2 minutes to go, which meant for a pretty nervy final bit of injury time. But Spurs managed to make it through, and they looked absolutely knackered at full time. I think Bergvall and Gray, the 18-year-olds who are playing all the time at the moment, were on their feet, lying down, just absolutely shattered after that particular performance, showing how much they've really put into it. But they got the job done, and that is the most important thing. When confidence feels like from the outside it's very low after obviously the run they've been on, 1 win in 10 in the league, leaving them in 15th and way off nowhere near the sort of European spots, nearer to the relegation zone. Everyone's sort of criticising them. Obviously players completely knackered, the ones who are actually fit to play because of so many injuries. And the manager having to constantly pick them up and get them going for another game every few days. You can understand why. So they're going to have to use this confidence they can take from this game, the fact that they've won a game again, and in Europe and away from home, which cannot be underestimated, I don't think. And that's what Ange was sort of at pains to stress in his post-match press conference. So they need to take this into Leicester at the weekend. It was a big week for Ange Postecoglou anyway, given the results, the way it's been going. He's had a good start with a win here. If they can go and beat Leicester, which they really, really need to in the league to sort of sort out their league form and arrest the slide against the Leicester team that have lost 7 in a row and have their own fans calling for Ruvan Nisri's head already, then that would be a big step in their rehabilitation, I suppose is still the word to use, and another step closer to having players come back, albeit unfortunately not Solanke after today's news. Just on to Ange's comments, he talked about how he said that the players were exhausted, and he praised them for their efforts because of that. Well, a big part of that because of that. He hailed the senior players in particular, because obviously recently we've seen the younger players step up. Ahead of, I think, the Everton game, he basically had, to a certain extent, put a call to arms to get the senior players to start putting in some more leadership and better performances. Not as strong words as that, but essentially that was what he was saying. And so he took the chance here to really praise them for their efforts, the likes of Maddison, the likes of Son, the likes of Bentancur. He said the performance was outstanding overall. And he said not to downplay, as I said, the winning away in Europe doesn't happen as often as you might think, and that now they're in a really good position in the league, in the Europa League that is. They're now 4th, I believe, albeit only 1 point off Man United, who are in 9th. So there's still some work to do against Elfsborg next week at home, but you would fancy their chances against them to finish the job and make sure they get that top 8 spot and avoid a tricky playoff in February. And he talks about, once they've got their players back, then they feel like they can go against anyone and be a match for anyone. And if that is the case, then they can sort of stay fit and get through, then Tottenham definitely can be a threat in this competition, let alone the Carabao Cup, where they're in a decent position in the semi-final, still in the FA Cup. He's reiterated throughout this gloomy winter with the league, well, lots of people seem to be losing faith, and he kind of referenced that actually. He was asked about how difficult it is to sort of manage during these periods, and he was saying with the Premier League the noise is louder than ever, and he can sense a lot of the dissenting voices outside and doubters, but he has to sort of put that to one side and can retain the belief that he's got, which he feels like he does. But he reiterated, like I said, the importance of the cup competitions. They can still be the saving grace for the season, and this result tonight, albeit like I said against a poor Hoffenheim side, could be a big moment in their season. And that pretty much wraps it up from Hoffenheim over here. Like I say, not been. It's not like they blew them away against a side that have barely won this season, and they had their hairy moments. So I don't think any fans are going to be sort of coming away from this game thinking Spurs are back. They realise the problems they've got, and the fragility they still seem to have at the back, even against a side that have struggled for goals and performances this season. But a win is a win. They got it, they got through, and it gives them something to build on ahead of Leicester at home in the weekend. Maybe the tide can start to turn, but unfortunately they're still having issues when it comes to Dominic Solanke being injured, amongst all the other injuries they've got. So we'll see. I'll speak to you after the Leicester game at the weekend, and we'll go from there. Cheers, guys.